scene is set. You're at your favorite tavern, sitting at the triangle-shaped table when the barkeep comes up. It's too bad the barkeep came up, because you were eavesdropping on the barbarian and the cleric sitting at the next table. They were talking about a black dragon not far from here. The reward? Substantial. It's time to go get the dragon.
We all have garbage, and we like to play games. How to use garbage in your games.
Woo! That's a wrap, folks. That's a wrap.
Welcome to the second video in our series, How to Use Garbage in Your Game. Today we're going to use all the garbage that you see in front of you to talk about how to manage combat in 3D, which is a little bit tricky. So today we're going to use blueberry containers, corks from alcohol bottles. One of my favorite things to keep and use is the insert from an olive oil or vinegar or whatever kind of liquid in a bottle. It's got a lot of uses. The lid from an olive oil bottle. The container that the Parmesan cheese came in when I ordered pizza the other day. Pizza box separators. This one I painted in the first episode or the first video. We'll be using both of these today. And then something that isn't garbage, a card holder. You've been tracking your prey for days. Finally you come to a waterfall when suddenly the black dragon bursts out of the waterfall, flying above your party and starting to attack. Your DM says, roll for initiative. The dragonborn character has a breath weapon. He's wondering just how high up in the air the dragon is. The angel character says, hey, don't forget I'm already flying. The wizard has a spell she'd like to cast. Its range is conveniently 25 feet, but the dragon's up in the air. How high up is the dragon in the air? It's a pretty typical problem when you're dealing with flight in a role-playing game is how do you manage the flight? Now, I'm going to pause the camera, put a couple things down, and we'll see how it could have started just a little bit differently. You've been tracking your prey for days. Suddenly, it bursts out from the waterfall. It's clearly flying. You can see that it's, 60, 70 feet up in the air. The angel hovering over the trees some 20 feet in the air. This is how the combat could have started. We know that the angel's 20 feet in the air because we're using dice next to any creature that is elevated off of the playmat. So the angel sitting on top of the olive oil bottle cap, dice 4 times 5 is 20 feet up in the air. The wizard, the dwarf, the dragonborn are all on the ground, and the dragon, elevated off of the board with a 14 next to it, is 70 feet up in the air. Round 2, the wizard casts fly, flies up. We'll go with, 30 feet up into the air. The dragon, seeing that 2 of them are flying, flies just a little bit higher out of their range. So how would we calculate distance if we want to know how far everything is away from each other? Matt Colville, on his excellent Playing the Game video series, had really good advice for managing this in 2D, and that's just use the longest line. So in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 20 minus 6, 14. 14 is the longer line. The wizard and the dragon are 70 feet apart. Similarly, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, or 20 minus 4. Obviously, that's a bigger number, 16, 80 feet apart. So that's one way to do it. When the numbers are close together, ironically, when the 2 dice are close together, these 2, for example, the distance, the hypotenuse of the triangle makes a bigger difference. What I would suggest, if you really want to add a little bit of variation in, since it's unlikely everyone is actually hovering at any given moment, that you roll a die 4. If a 1 or a 2 comes up, you don't add any distance. If a 3 comes up, you add 5 feet. If a 4 comes up, you add 10 feet. So in this case, if we wanted to do that, we would just roll a die 4. A 4 came up, so to understand how far these two apart, we would do 20 minus 6, or 14, times 5 is 70. A 4 came up, another 10, 80 feet apart. To affect each other, they'd have to have a spell or a breath weapon or any kind of weapon that has a range of 80 feet or less. So that's one way to do it. Just put the miniatures that are not on the ground on top of something. In this case, we're using my favorite little insert from an olive oil bottle, which is perfectly sized on a mini. A bottle cap from an olive oil bottle. And in this case, we used the pizza box separator. Another option, obviously, is to use the pizza box Parmesan. I'm just going to bump the table here pretty hard. The table actually moved and none of the miniatures fell off of the items. This one moved a little bit, but it didn't fall off. So it's unlikely, unless your players actually bump into the things, that anything's going to fall over. But then if they bump into a miniature on the table, it's going to move anyway. So there you have it. One of the ways that we can use garbage in our game to manage 3D combat. Hey everybody, we're back to show another option for managing 3D combat using garbage in our games. That's using the blueberry container for the dragon instead of the, you may recall we used this at the end. Doesn't fit over the top of other miniatures very well. The blueberry container fits actually really well. It allows us to indicate that the dragon is flying right over the dwarf. Now, it's a little clunky. They're kind of big. If you want to move them around, you got to be kind of careful. It also isn't quite tall enough to fit over the angel, although it sort of did, although the sword went in. But you're going to have a lot more problems with things falling over, like we just showed there. This is an option. Again, it allows us to indicate that the dragon is right over the dwarf. It takes up less space. We can get a much larger miniature in there. Unfortunately, you have to take the miniature out to move it around. Unlike this, which just allowed us to put it right on top of it. A couple different ways you can manage 3D combat using garbage in your game. I kind of prefer the method where everything is just raised up a little bit, like we showed earlier. If these two end up being in the same vertical space, just put them next to each other. Combat's not that precise in the real world, and we're back for another scenario. One of the things I talked about in the intro was fighting in air or water. So you can see here we have sea devils fighting against the party. The sea devil and the angel character are 50 feet and 20 feet below the others. That's designated by them being on the table surface, and the die actually shows how far below the other characters, kind of at the, we'll call it level 0, even though that could be 10 feet below water, 100 feet below water, 100 feet up in the air. Then we have the dwarf and the dragonborn fighting a sea devil, and then 10 feet above them we have the wizard. So this is one way that you could track a fight in 3 dimensions where nobody is on land. If you have to worry about moving the wizard so that she's further away, that's always an option. So there you have a couple different ways that you can think about 3D fights in water or in the air. Hello, good people of the internet. I totally forgot to film an important part of their YouTube video, especially for brand new people. please like, please share, please subscribe. I'd love some comments. Kind of, what'd you feel about that video? Everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you.